So one thing about a monopolistically competitive market is that they have, as we just saw, slightly differentiated products compared to if it was perfect competition. That's why what you usually do if you're in a monopolistically competitive market is you want to spend a lot of money on advertising. Show people that, hey, my bananas are better than, some other, banana vendors' products. And so that's why you're going to spend a lot of money trying to advertise. So one kind of indication in the real world, if you want to see if something's in a monopolistic competitive market, it's probably because they're advertising more, they're trying to stand out. On the other hand, if you're a oligopoly or a monopoly, you kind of don't, in theory at least, you don't really need to market that much, do a lot of marketing because, hey, people already kind of have no other choice, or very limited choices at least. So here, that's one thing. So your product differentiation is what makes you have that market power. So that's sort of a key aspect in the real world if you want to try to distinguish between those. So suppose you're in a monopolistically competitive market and you have your demand and your supply curve, your MC curve. Well, the way to find your point of production is actually the same as any other monopoly or even oligopoly, where you first want to find your MR curve. Again, not the markets, but just this is your demand curve, not the whole market. It's just you for your specialized product, right? So you find your MR curve, find where your MR equals MC. So it's technically the same rule. The only difference then is in the long run. So this is what the price is going to be. Now, to think about what happens to the long run, and you kind of have to look at the long run average total cost curve. Because remember, the formula for profits is quantity times P minus ATC. So if you recall, with perfect competition, what happened was, we went all the way, our price was our demand for an individual firm was always horizontal. And as people kept entering when we had positive profits, the price kept going down until we were sort of at the minimum of the long run ATC. But either way, P equals ATC in that case, and so that's why your profits were zero. Basically, if it costs you, 40 cents to produce your item and you're selling it for a price of 40 cents, you're making zero profit. Your price equals your average total cost in the long run. And that's actually true not just for perfect competition, but also for monopolistic competition, because what happens is, if you're somewhere here, let's say you're making a profit, let's say your demand curve looks like this, right? And let's say you're, producing some quantity. Let's say you're producing this quantity and, you're setting, again, the price that you charge is always on your demand curve. So if you're selling it at this price at that quantity, if you think about it, hey, you're making this much profits, right? Because, hey, that's your price, that's your ATC at that quantity level, so you have some profits. So what's going to happen is, other people are going to now enter. They're going to say, hey, this guy's Chinese restaurant's making profits. I'm going to open up my own Chinese restaurant. And what that's going to do is that's going to lower your demand. So your demand shifts left. And now your profits get lowered because the gap gets lowered. In fact, that keeps happening until your demand and your ATC are kind of tangent to each other. And now, turns out, just to sort of draw it separately, you're in the long run, when if that's your ATC curve, that's your demand. So you're not quite at the minimum of the ATC, but you're at a point where you're producing at a quantity where, your price that you're charging equals your ATC. They both have the same Y value. So if your price equals your ATC, you have zero long run profits. So here's the ironic, kind of also sad part, that if you're in a monopolistically competitive firm, in the long run, you're making zero profits. Same as with perfect competition. Yet, there's actually some inefficiency here. It's called excess capacity. Long story short, we could be at this minimum ATC point, producing this high quantity. But instead, as we said, you're sort of tangent somewhere before that minimum. So here, this is a quantity that perfect competition would have produced. This is a quantity that monopolistic competition produces. So that gap, how much fewer quantity you're producing compared to if you were perfect competition, notice you'd even charge a lower price in the long run if you were in perfect competition compared to here, because your long run price is over here, but in perfect competition, the long run price is always the minimum of the ATC, if you recall. So that's why it's kind of sad that, the customers have to pay a little bit more, they get a less quantity, there's excess capacity, meaning you have the capacity to do more. That's really, deadweight loss really here. So there is deadweight loss in long run for the monopolistic competition. Yet, see, with monopolies, there's deadweight loss, but they're also making a profit in the long run. Same with oligopolies. Here, there's deadweight loss, but you're not even getting a benefit out of it. You still have zero long run profits. So that's what the equilibrium is for monopolistic competitions in the long run.